Major Fred Galvin, retired from the U.S. Marine Corps, is back to talk about, well, everybody's a little nervous about World War III, Fred. I don't know what you think about that, but let's give your book a shout out first in case we do go to World War III, people have to hunker down. At least you have a good book to read in your basement. We don't have basements here in Florida, so we'll have to figure out another plan. I guess we'll just go hang out with the cows in the pasture. But go check out Fred's book. It's really good. It's a page turner. Few Bad Men, the true story of U.S. Marines ambushed in Afghanistan and betrayed in America. Fred, let's read this, if you don't mind, for people. This is the announcement that came from the Biden administration, ordering the selected reserve and certain members of the individual ready reserve of the armed forces to active duty. I want you to just help me line by line for people understand the context and the relevance of each thing here, because I figure this might be important and we don't know what we're talking about when we're not in the military. The language may have more meaning for you than it does for us. So in the title, is there anything ordering the selected reserve and certain members of the individual ready reserve of the armed forces to active duty, like a difference between the selected reserve versus individual ready reserve, and anything in the headline we should take away?
Allie, this is a good topic because having come from prior to working with Tesla, doing influence operations for the Department of Defense, a lot of this thing is posturing. So it makes it seem like we're doing something. There's an imminent crisis, but what we have here is, I'm sure you and many of your listeners are very well aware of, is reserves are activated, especially during the summer, and now they're being ordered to conduct an exercise in the Atlantic area of responsibility, and this is nothing out of the ordinary. It's not like they are called to active duty for a year, that there's an imminent crisis, that they're responding to a strategic situation that we're specifying, like this is a special situation. This is a standard short-term activation. We do it all the time, but it makes things look like, if a lot of people want to sensationalize things, that, hey, here we're going to war. What I always mention to people is, if you're looking for something that you really need to keep your eye on, keep your eye on China. Keep your eye on the Straits of Taiwan. What was not covered in the news this week, or let me say, not given enough due attention, is we had this happened 2 months ago, but on Monday and Tuesday we had 38 warcraft flying into the sovereign airspace of Taiwan, as well as 6 warships from the People's Liberation Army Navy in the territorial waters of Taiwan. So this is where we really need to be focusing our attention, and not on a pittance of reservists. And I'm not trying to short sell what reservists do. They have a very important role, but they're going over to Europe, where right now Putin has his hands full trying to tangle with the Ukrainians. We are dumping a ton of money, which is making a ton of retired 4-star generals, the likes of Mattis, Dunford, and so on and so forth, who are board members of General Dynamics, Raytheon. Look at the current Secretary of Defense. Where did he come from right before this? That's right. He came from Raytheon and all this military industrial complex. So yes, we do want to have, I shouldn't say we, let's categorize that. Let's make it, there are warmongers, war pimps, let's call them, these retired general officers who are having their bidding done by generals. They're being the puppeteers for these generals in the White House. So we're sending some people over there. It gets headlines. I believe, my personal opinion, this is just a distraction. Some people in the news are catching up on this when the real attention should be paid on what China is currently doing. And it's not just saber rattling. Like I said, these are continuing in frequency and escalating in size. 2 months ago, it was about 78 aircraft enter the Taiwan airspace, Chinese aircraft, and they completely enveloped. 2 months ago, they completely enveloped the Taiwan by the People's Liberation Army Navy with their ships. So, and then they, right after that, Ali, they said, the Chinese Communist Party said, we are ready to go to war. So you see this is a little misdirection, a little magic trick, trying to make it seem like we're posturing, we're strong, that, hey, America means business. Again, the last thing that President Biden wants prior to an election is a global war, which, I mean, Putin, pardon my technical term, he damn well knows what's going on in the United States, and that we do not have a society that even desires to fill the ranks by missing our goal last year in recruiting of 25% in the United States Army. In the Navy, to get people in, they had to raise their rate, their age to 41 years old. And in the Air Force, I think a woman now can join who has 36% body fat. Over a third of her body is fat. So the standards, and people say we're not going to change the standards. That's a complete lie. But why do I say all this? Our adversaries know what's going on in the United States military. They know, and that's something that we as Americans, we better be paying attention to when, just like the title of the book, A Few Bad Men, when people in America, the people in this republic, do not trust our military. And I was talking to a senior guy going into senior year in high school, 17, and I asked him if he'd want to join the military. He's like, his exact words, this is a kid from Silicon Valley, and this is what's going on in the minds of youth. He's like, to die in Taiwan? I was really shocked to hear him say that, because that was his first time I had ever met or talked to him. And but that's reality. People understand that this general officer class that retired, they're profiteering on going to war, and this likely will happen. Hopefully it will not, but it doesn't when we have a strong military that's a deterrence. And right now we don't. And the Chinese realize that we have this made man in the White House. And I'm going to get into your White House statement there, because it also came out with this comments that you can see in the White House press office from another recent article he gave to the president of Finland there in Helsinki, where he talks about biodiversity. And Ali, anytime you see the word with a prefix div, any type of diversity, that's exactly what it is. It means that someone wants to divide, and Russia is very, very good at influence operations, and they do this by dividing the United States. And that's our strength, is that we are united, and anytime they can drive a wedge by, the whole thesis of communism is, to assign people to groups and get them to fight amongst each other. And they have done that very effectively. I worked in this space, and I realized what Russia primarily was doing to divide us, and that's what we're doing. So when Russia sees that we're so woke that our national leader is talking about biodiversity, and our Secretary of Defense talks, and in that same speech in Helsinki to the president of Finland, he's talking about climate change. All this is misdirection. It's a magic trick to make it seem like, the earth is right now, it's falling apart. This is a living hell, and we have minutes to react. If you listen to AOC or Al Gore, I mean, these people, believe in it because they profit from it. So when our president talks about this, when the current Secretary of Defense say this is our number one threat, we are in, we're on the payroll. Our national leaders are on the payroll of, these people, and they're doing just what they want. That is not our greatest threat. Our greatest threat is if we did go to war, which we can, and that's what we need to be aware of. So I take this rhetoric from the White House. This is like a scare tactic to take everybody's eyes off of the real threat, and that is with a country that isn't committed to a small situation like in Ukraine. And we can talk about how Russia got into Ukraine, and they did have an incursion a year and a half ago by pushing into Kazakhstan, the country that President Biden's son, that's right, the crack addict, has on the board of Burisma is getting $83,000 a month. Surprise, surprise, we get some cocaine found in a part of the White House, but they realize.
Fred, it's like I have to stop you while you're
Yes.
saying this because
Yes.
you're talking about, it's like you brought up like Russia dividing us and China
Yes.
dividing us, but I listened to you talk about the Biden administration and the military brass, and I'm like, we don't need Russia and China. We're, as Lynn calls Seattle, we're a self-licking ice cream cone right here at home. I don't know what that means. Is that a military thing, a self-licking ice cream cone? But my husband uses that as like some kind of very derogatory statement. And it seems like we don't really need the help of any like adversary. We're like very, we're very skilled at destroying our country right here at home. So I don't know.
Yes.
I mean, and somebody made a comment I wanted to ask you about too, because there's some folks who are like, Taiwan isn't Taiwan free, but anyway, what China does with its own island is its business. I guess that's a political statement in and of itself. Taiwan does not concern us. It's the same as Ukraine, except with Asian people. What do you think when someone says that? If someone's critical of like, hey, you see the Ukraine thing for what it is, what are people being duped into thinking that China is a real concern too, and we got to deploy to China? And what do you think when people say that?
So and I didn't read the full statement there, but it sounded like from what you said.
Back.
Yes.
Here we go. Hang on. What China does with its own island is its business. Taiwan does not concern us. It's the same as Ukraine, except with Asian people.
Okay. I love Annie Ann because God rest her soul, I had an Aunt Annie. But China, that's not an island of China. Maybe somebody from China thinks it is, and that's what the Chinese Communist Party thinks, that Taiwan, and when they invade, they're going to say this is a peaceful reunification. It is not part of China, but our Department of State has to temper its words. They don't even call people in Taiwan Taiwanese; they call them Taiwans, so that they don't provoke China. But this is a sensitive situation. That we don't have a technical embassy in Taiwan because that would recognize that it's independent. But China, it is not. They don't take their orders from Beijing or Xi Jinping. They are their own country, so it's not. Now, somebody who is from China may feel differently, and because that's what they believe in China, that is our island, and we're going to control it again. That's what Xi Jinping and this resurgent, they are going to take it. And we no longer have a treaty to defend Taiwan. We did, and it has expired, but it is its own country. And they have their own special situation, which is similar to ours. They have a population that doesn't want to serve in the military to the scale that they need to defend their own country.
But can you, before we go back to the White House statement on Ukraine, NATO, can you explain why you see China and Taiwan differently than Ukraine and Russia? I mean, if you believe they're two separate countries, why should we get involved in either?
Yes, hopefully we don't. But when I believe China will, as an example, and I'm going to talk about apples to airplanes here. If we wanted, as the United States, to push less than 100 miles and take Cuba, what country could stop us? The answer is none. If we want to do it right now, it could be done, but we don't. Similarly, if Beijing wanted to push the 96 miles across the Straits of Taiwan and the reason that they're doing all these exercises and saying now we're ready for war, because they're planning to go and take this, and likely they will advertise this as a peaceful reunification. But that does stop, and it is a game changer as far as everything else that will go on in Asia and the quality of life, the standard of living that we have in America. A lot of it comes from, and trust me, the international equity markets will not react positively or have no reaction at all if and when China takes and lodges in Taiwan. That is going to have massive global economic impacts that we have to be very careful about. Just if you're looking at one company, Taiwan Semiconductor, which is building plants outside of Taiwan to prepare for this. They're building plants in Arizona and other semiconductor companies. Intel, they're preparing for this. This is going to have a global impact. What's going on in Ukraine? Yeah, we have greater cost for fertilizer for a lot of agriculture that has caused hyperinflation, but it hasn't caused what, if we, likely there's going to be a response if China lodges in Taiwan to dislodge it. The only way we're going to dislodge it isn't by giving some money and weapons to the Japanese or some other countries. We're probably going to go into a full-scale combat operations, which the only way to get onto Taiwan once they've lodged is to conduct amphibious and airborne operations, which is going to be very bloody. And if the American military doesn't lead the way, nobody else will.
But the Marine Corps has rainbow bullets now. I saw it on Twitter. They were celebrating Pride Day with rainbow bullets. So don't say that those couldn't have a positive effect. I don't know.
Well, and that is, again, Allie, anything that divides us, when you put us into categories, these themes and messages, that's what I used to do in influence operations. You're trying to put people in categories. That's what the Chinese do very, very well with TikTok. And we do the same in their countries. We're trying to, but when, like in the CCP, when you block, you put firewalls so you can't message the people because you control, it's all these state-owned enterprises. Well, that's an effective defense to prevent us from being influencing their population. But trust me, we still attempt to. They're just much more successful at it here. And if you think TikTok and all these other platforms, whether it's Chinese influence into professional sports, into our universities, this is having a massive effect on the United States.
Okay, well, your best friend Annie Ann has a follow-up, okay?
There she is.
One China policy is U.S. policy. Do you have MIC stock? Both parties want war. GOP wants war with China. Dems want war with Russia. The war is not meant to be won. The war is meant to be continuous. And then we got to get back to the letter. And I got to promote some wine, everybody. So go ahead, Fred. Actually, wait. Everybody has to hold on for Fred and Annie Ann's solo sparring match here for 1 second so I can get my wine out there before the war starts, all right? Remember, Dr. Cariotti said yesterday that the Allison Morrow Show and all of you who support it have made it into the lawsuit Missouri versus Biden over free speech and the First Amendment. And so it's, yes, you can say hi.
Hi.
That's Fred. Okay, Al. So get your AllisonWinePromo.com. Celebrate before whatever war we get into. Hopefully we don't get into any. But if we do, you got Fred's book and you got some wine, you're set. 50% off the wine itself, 50% off shipping. Don't forget, these are wines you cannot get at the grocery store. They're very, very good. High altitude, extremist altitude. The one in the middle from almost 9,000 feet, 200-year-old vineyard, oldest vineyard in Argentina. Ones on the left and the right, almost 6,000 feet. Natural fermentation, no filtration, all kinds of reasons to get these wines other than the fact that you're supporting my work. If, on the other hand, you're a coffee drinker, don't forget to go to twinenginecoffee.com/Allison, twinenginecoffee.com/Allison, where you can get USDA certified organic roast, light roast, dark roast. There's even Katura tea. Great companies that support me through all kinds of crazy interviews. And also, though I haven't found a babysitter here in Florida, obviously, someday when I find one, I'll be able to pay for it. Okay, Fred, let's go back to Annie Ann's question. Hang on, I'm going to pull up the White House thing here real fast. So we can just look at it again. And then this was, let me just pull it back up so we make sure we get it right here. Okay. There you go. Go for it. Both parties want war. GOP wants war with China. Dems want war with Russia. The war is not meant to be won. The war is meant to be continuous.
Yes, I would agree with a lot of this, and I'll go line by line. So one China policy is not U.S. policy. One China policy, and for those listeners that may be uncertain about this, this is not having one child, which used to be called one. Some people had interpreted it as one China policy. This is China is one country. As you know, to be very clear, as I mentioned before, we had a treaty to defend Taiwan, and we had recognized, and that's where it's, like I mentioned, we don't have an embassy, a normal diplomatic mission in there, but it's called the American Institute of Taiwan, and they're in Taipei, because we're very sensitive and we don't want to provoke actions. But when we have all these, with our coalition, the French, the British, the Australians, the Germans. We are doing a lot of naval exercises in the South China Sea and the East China Seas. We are trying to deter, because it is not like, oh, it's one China, so we'll just go home. That is not the United States policy, and nor is it for our coalition. China is aggressively trying to influence countries through their One Belt, One Road. They have 140 signatures, and these are basic client states of Beijing. And but we are trying to work to ensure that if we go to war, we will protect, we will be able to offer an alliance to the Chinese. But a lot of these countries, as many people realize, they're taking money out of both hands. They'll take the ports, they'll take the infrastructure, they'll take the high-speed railways from Beijing, and the United States offers things as well. But it is not that we believe that, Taiwan is under the sovereign control of Beijing. That's not U.S. policy. I do not own MIC stock, and I don't care to go on. I'm not a stockholder. I do spreads in equity options, but that's not for this conversation right here. I would agree that both parties do want war. This is very profitable. These weapon systems are made, just like when you look at the B-52, there's parts of it made in every single state in the United States. This is big business. It's big business for jobs in all these states. And if you look at our non-discretionary spending, if you take all the discretionary spending out, the largest expense of our non-discretionary spending is the Department of Defense. So, and if you look at the Department of Defense by head count, it is the largest in size of any business in the United States. Until recently, if you added the number 2 and number 3 together, combined, Amazon and Walmart, it would not have even, still the Department of Defense with all its active reserve, civilians, contractors, still outnumbered the number 2 and 3 combined. So this is big business. People make money. I call it, people think that I'm not genuflecting and being irreverent towards these generals, but trust me, when you fly into Washington, D.C., whether it's there in Reagan International Airport or Dulles, and you see the names on the tops of all those buildings, look who's on their boards. Those buildings, those names of those companies, they employ retired 3- and 4-star generals, especially if they retired out of the Pentagon there in Washington, D.C., or down in Tampa. If they had 3 and 4 stars and they're in charge of these forever wars in the Middle East, like in the Central Command, or they're on the Joint Staff, they have influence inside the Pentagon. They have the connections with the members of the House and Senate Armed Services Committees, and they have, please, it's a nonfiction book. Read the book, A Few Bad Men, and you'll understand. You'll see how Mattis, look at General James Mattis's connections, how he was on the board of Theranos, who was trying to sell this product to the Department of Defense and use it prior to FDA testing. And I know a lot of Americans, to include myself, aren't good with putting anything in somebody's body that's not fully approved by the FDA. But that's exactly what General Mattis was doing. And then about a year and a half ago, he testified to Congress about how he was on the board and he had his own money in it. He didn't know. Well, that's what a lot of board members do. They get in a startup, they buy in early, it explodes, they get out with a golden parachute. Whether it works or not, that's a different story. But they're privy to information, and that's how they make a lot of money. Trust me when I say, hopefully everyone will realize these generals, they can go live wherever they want to when they retire. General Dynamics, Raytheon, Lockheed, they will fly them into the Pentagon, just like Joe Dunford, he was our last chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, immediately went to work for Lockheed Martin, the world's largest defense contractor. These guys are not employed. Lockheed makes these massive aerospace systems, just like Raytheon made aerospace, radars, all this high-tech stuff. In Lloyd Austin, if you put up a picture of Lloyd Austin and look at his resume, he does not have a PhD in aerospace. He was Austin, Mattis, Dunford, myself. We are all infantry officers. That means we just learned to walk upright and stop dragging our knuckles. We're Neanderthals. We don't have a tech background. We're not like the people in my business that are working out of the engineering headquarters in Palo Alto with Tesla. These guys are knuckle draggers, just like I am, and there's no general left behind program to help get these guys who are making $203,000 a year in retirement salary off the streets. No, they're paid for one reason, and that's return on investments. That's for access and placement, because if you are retired 4-star general, you don't have to have badge access. You can automatically just walk into the Pentagon. And trust me, those 3- and 4-star generals that they promoted for their last 10 and 20 years in the Marine Corps or the military, it's the stick and carrot system. And they realize, like, if they want a job afterwards, and look at all these people in the military and look at what they've done to our military and how woke and broke it is. It is ineffective. We can't even recruit people for a large part, especially like in the Marine Corps. It's a family business. And Allison, you tell me if you would feel comfortable with your children joining the military right now, because the situation, what your husband did is not what people are doing right now, not in the same way. And
I don't even know if I agree with what my husband was sent over to do. So he and I talk about that all the time. I'm glad I wasn't
to win hearts and minds of people that believe in Sharia law. That didn't go so well after 20 years, but it was a forever war. And Aunt Annie's right. I had an Aunt Ann, I'm sorry. But,
yeah, and Aunt Ann did come back and said not to be contrarian. So I think you guys are making up. I usually just watch and learn, but I want wars to stop. I want to bring our troops home. Military could fix this country's infrastructure, backfill hospitals, etc. See what happens when you talk it out. You find common ground.
And Annie Ann, I would say this. I agree totally with you. I'm not into forever wars. We've seen a lot of good friends die. Unfortunately, I don't want to have any more of that. We have to have a deterrence, but that is through an effective military. We can't be sending our military just to profit like we did during the Banana Wars 100 years ago. I will also say this, that yes, Republicans and Democrats, they both want wars. Where they want them and when they want them, that's up for some other discussion. But it's a situation that we need to avoid. And I'm not just talking about problems. One solution in America is every single incumbent, and I keep saying this, is hold them accountable by voting every single one of them out. I don't care if you like this guy, that gal. Trust me, they are puppeteers. They have a Geppetto. When we were going through our trial where the Marine Corps tried to throw us in jail and falsely accused us, they knew. They had our polygraph. They had sworn statements from all of us. They knew we were innocent, our 7 Marine special operators, but they continued to push this. And that type of unethics, having at that time when I was retired, I was living in Hawaii, and Tulsi Gabbard, who everybody, the beloved Tulsi Gabbard, let's genuflect. I'll tell you what Tulsi Gabbard did. 0, nothing. I'm a veteran. I'm for veterans. She was the only member of Congress in the state of Hawaii that didn't even write back. And my point isn't to trash Tulsi Gabbard, but the point is all they care about, God rest the soul of Congressman Walter Jones, but he was very accurate when he said that the United States Congress is the biggest house of prostitution in the United States. And he's very accurate and true with that. He said underneath this area that we were having this meeting is a call center where they go to get out of their offices and they dial for dollars to contact all their donors and get donations. That, just like the public policy residency in my MBA class, when we went to Washington, D.C., they said the number one goal of every politician is, retention of power. It's reelection. When we went to our global business residency in Beijing, that's the same thing. Is like the number one goal of the Chinese Communist Party is preservation of power. So our political leaders have the same in common as other political leaders around the world, and they do that. These people don't have the heart of George Washington and just doing the right thing, and whether it's in the military and in resigning by surrendering their sword and having a republic. No, they are there for themselves. And I hate saying that, but again, back to my recommended solution is do what this republic allows through our democratic process and vote all incumbents out. That will send a signal that we don't tolerate your garbage, and we will only have leaders in there. And when we get mesmerized by, oh, the ancient Spartans, they would hold their everybody accountable for the words they say. Why don't we do the same in America? We have the power. This is a republic. We have a democratic process, but we can go and vote and get the people in and out that we want if we do vote. But stop allowing Democrats and Republicans that are war pimps and pushing these forever wars. Do you think it took 20 years to have any effect in Afghanistan? We lost. We walked out of there, and guess what? We left $7 billion worth. But that's okay, because there's a lot of companies that will sell more war material back to the U.S. military. So I know I'm day early on my Sunday morning sermon. Sorry, Allie.
No, it's okay. I just, as long as you're here, let's do something. I'm not done. Adam Ben Helen Shapiro, I think you're a bot and you're getting banned. So I want everybody to be here for this. I am a free speech advocate, but I'm pretty sure you're a bot, and I am banning you from the chat. I'm also going to ban this person. Let's go back. I'm just doing this very transparently, so people don't think I'm just doing this because I just don't like what you're saying. I don't believe you're from Yahoo. I think you're a bot. You're getting banned. I don't know why our talk today, Fred, has been so popular with the bots, but they have come out in full force. Okay, well, since you think that this is a distraction, the news picking up on, which I could totally believe. I mean, I think the stuff that gets put in front of us and everybody gets hyped up about, I totally think, probably more times than not is that. So why don't I just go to the questions that people had for you over at Locals? And okay. Don't forget, everybody, AlisonMorrow.locals.com, where you can be on my editorial board and put questions ahead of time for interviews. $5 a month, get to go one-on-one with the most censored people on the internet. It's a great way to support my work too. Okay, DMC wants to know, are you familiar with Catherine Pollard Griggs, aka Kay Griggs' 1998 interview exposing U.S. military ties to secret societies?
No, I'm not. Sorry.
Okay, I'll send you the link. Why reservists?
Again, this is we don't want to accentuate anything going on in the Taiwan Straits. That would really rattle the sabers and could, we are doing active operations mainly with active forces, but there are reservists in the Pacific area of operation. This is nothing out of the ordinary. Standard operations by sending reservists over to Europe, it happens all the time. It happens for 6 to 12 months. I have a lot of friends who got off active duty, joined the reserves, and they go and serve in a bunch of different roles in unit deployments to Europe. So this isn't anything that America should be alarmed by. It's normal, but it does project power internationally that, okay, we're taking a stance, but it's
okay.
It's posturing.
Okay. We're okay. Sorry, everybody.
Yeah, and it does make.
Take it away, Fred. Take it away for a second. Take it away.
Okay. So it does make certain political leaders and parties look like they're strong militarily, that they're taking a response to the righteous cause. And that's what we used to do in Afghanistan. It's the righteous, we're going after bin Laden. The same type of posturing now in Russia that, Russia, it's they're a tyrant. They took over Ukraine, and we're going to respond. This is taking heat and pressure and it's virtue signaling that, we're stopping a tyrant by sending 3,000. Let's calibrate our gauges here. 3,000. Trust me, Biden's not going to go to war with Russia. He's not putting a 3,000 less than a regimental size to stop anything. We're not going to be firing off rockets. The war in Eastern Europe is going to be done the way that those in Washington, D.C. want it done, and that is selling more weapons, billions and billions of more weapons to the Ukrainians, or I shouldn't say selling, handing it to them. But there is money being received. These aren't nonprofit organizations, Lockheed and Raytheon and General Dynamics, the big boys. But there's a ton of money to win over there, and that's what it's all about, is keep that war going. That has done a lot for the United States economy. When we have this hyperinflation, when America doesn't have, traveling around here recently, and I just see the massive costs. I'm wondering how, people on fixed incomes can sustain, their quality of life when, the gas is the way it is, food is the way it is, energy is the way it is. These are serious issues that we have to pay attention to in America. And, I'm not in the law enforcement industry, but I just see all these signs all around the United States of, this human trafficking, all this. You can go into any major city and see, evidence of, what the moral decay has allowed when we open our borders and we allow it to take jobs away from U.S. citizens, when we allow the drugs, the hardcore opioids to enslave our American citizens, the fentanyl. I mean, I go to large cities, small cities continuously, and I see people that, this was not the country that I had served for 27 years. And when I left the bubble of the military and came back, and, now I'm traveling around with Tesla, I see, people who are enslaved to fentanyl and opioids, and how this is being laced in a lot of drugs such as marijuana. And people think, oh, that's so natural. It's trust me, America, we have to be aware of what is going on, that our youth, and as well as many demographics, are being robbed of their lives. When you talk about 100,000 deaths to opioids last year, let's talk about the ones that didn't die, that, now they have Narcan to keep people alive, but that their lives were robbed. This is a serious problem. These precursor chemicals, which are made in China, that are coming through the northeast Shan state of Burma and then go into western Mexico to come across our borders. This is a serious, serious problem, but we're not addressing it. We have these, misdirection. Oh, we got this stuff going on in Europe. Check out Finland over here. We're responding to Putin. Let's look at the real threats to America, which are opioids, which are loss of labor because of illegal immigration, which another one is the potential likely threat. We used to call China a near peer, and now we recognize that they are advancing so rapidly in America. We have to be paying attention to this. Now we call them a competing threat because they're not a near peer. They're shoulder to shoulder. And once they are continue to advance and doing what they've been doing recently here in this last year of doing large scale joint forces operations with all their different branches, they're going to take Taiwan. And we will probably respond to that. And it is going to cost tens of thousands, not casualties like we had over 20 years in Iraq and Afghanistan. It'll cost tens of thousands of American lives, and it'll disrupt our entire supply chain and our economic way of life. That's what we need to be, aware of, and that the United States military isn't some petri dish that we can toy around with and experiment and have people be so demoralized that, trust me, a year ago I came to Tesla from Hawaii, and while I was there working in the Department of Defense, I saw all these senior leaders, and Allie, your husband knows some of these guys, and they're not getting out. They're not waiting with that anticipation to get out of the military because it's so hard because they've stopped deploying to Iraq and Afghanistan. They're not waiting to get out so they can take a high-paying tech job that doesn't exist in Hawaii. They're not terrified because their wife is getting this beautiful tan on the beaches of Waikiki. Those aren't the reasons. They're getting out because they can't stand how woke it is, and they've been targeted if they don't swallow these BS policies. But that's what's happened to our military. That's why we're doing everything. Trust me, I can send you a picture, Allie, of a guy who was a Marine officer selection officer who sent out a thing about 3 weeks ago on LinkedIn and said, hey, if you're from the ranks of captain through lieutenant colonel and want to get back in the Marine Corps, call me. We are having such a recruiting and retention crisis in the military, and it's not just a hollow force, but I'm talking about our capability. We don't have the best and brightest. You look at some of these I'll just call them well-nourished men and women, so I don't fat shame people. It's not the same military that we used to have, and that makes a difference. And people think like, yes, we do have to have people in our military that when there is a war and somebody's wielding a weapon against us, we have to go over there and be violent against them. It's not a pretty act. It's not, selling a nice product. War is, it's not a noun, it's a verb, and it's ugly. Somebody has to do it. And that's what we have to, as American citizens, ensure that our military leaders, like Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin, are not woke, are not talking about the biggest problems are climate change. The biggest problem is white male toxicity and white male extremism. I served for 27 years, and as of last year, I was still in the Department of Defense as a civilian. I never saw all these hate crimes, and I'm not saying that somebody in a barracks somewhere hasn't done something, but I see more in around the world. I see more going on in France here in the last couple of weeks. This is, we got to be aware that our leaders are saying that for a reason. There's not people lining up in any military organization wearing white sheets, and I'm not trying to joke around about this stuff, but that doesn't exist. This is not 1965 Birmingham, Alabama, get to the back of the bus. The military is the most in America diverse organization. They work together, and in recruit training, it is dismissing any ideology of your religion, race, color, creed, anything you have to be a fighting organization that's effective. And you have people like Lloyd Austin. Again, anytime that root or that prefix div is in there, it is intentionally in there to divide. It is not healthy for the United States. Our enemies, and mainly I'm talking Russia and China, have done mission analysis very, very, very well and detailed on the United States, and they understand that our center of gravity, that our, in like the business world we call it, our competitive advantage, is the fact that we are united, and they are doing everything to divide us, and it's very effective. They put all these people in camps so we can fight against each other. So sorry again for my sermon, Allie.
Okay, no problem. I appreciate hearing everything that you have to say. I'm letting everybody know we're moving back over to locals real fast. Okay, let me just get back here. How can we hold the president accountable to the Constitution that made it clear we are not here to start wars? I think you were talking about voting and getting people out of office and getting rid of incumbents and all that good stuff. I mean, I guess you covered a lot of that. Anything you want to add?
Absolutely. So it is very, very important. When people talk about like, oh, don't be some conspiracy theorist. Listen, if we can put a man on the moon, if we, in the United States, at SpaceX, we can vertically land rockets simultaneously, which is going on. If we are designing right now in Palo Alto autonomous vehicles that are able to be charged with this new product that we're coming out with, not trying to sell anything, but we can even autonomously, without any human intervention, recharge it without any human touch. We can do all this stuff. Guess what? We can make sure that our election ballot is secure. And I don't know why any American would be against that. We have some of the things that we are supposed to agree on in the United States is that we have the freedom to vote, we have the freedom to speak, to assemble, to worship, to be armed. We should be agreeing on that. But when we don't agree to the sanctity of having a secure voting process, trust me, if we can put a serial number on every single dollar bill, which there's billions of, we can ensure that every person that votes does it securely with a government ID, ideally with biometrics, so we ensure that it's not compromised and done more than once per person. And I'm not calling out any particular person or place, but this, why not? Why not? It's just like the freedom of speech. Who doesn't want it? Let's ensure that the first order of business before 2024, guess what? If you don't solve this problem, you're not going to get reelected. It's that simple. I mean, in the Bay Area and Silicon Valley, we have some of the best and brightest minds in America. And there's many other places, whether it's Boston or Austin. People can solve this problem. They can solve it like that, Allie. So my issue is, let's solve these problems. We are united. Let's let's have a United States that seeks peace and peace through strength. And that's only done when we are like what our forefathers wanted. We have a secure electoral process. It's done democratically. We have candidates that are not bought and sold. But I honestly believe that these candidates it's just so expensive. We're not going to get a good person in there. When American military leaders wanted to lock up 7 innocent men, like in the book A Few Bad Men, a nonfiction story that I wrote about our unit, and Tulsi Gabbard, the beloved of both parties, everybody loves Tulsi, she wouldn't even respond in the small island in her small district of Hawaii. It's not like she's that busy. She's got the least, come on. She's got other things to do, and that's, preserve power. And I believe she's trying to move on for bigger and better things, and wish her the best of luck. But, you better, if you don't support those who have fought and defended, and we fought ourselves out of an ambush, and our generals, read the book, our generals sought to imprison us for falsely alleging that we conducted mass murder, proven in the longest courtroom trial in Marine Corps history. And Tulsi Gabbard, nothing off her back, not at all. So we need to flush all these people out. Let's bring in fresh blood, and let's get after it. But first of all, let's communicate very loudly and clearly to our leaders that before the 2024 primaries begin, you solve this problem. This is our number one issue. Before this garbage in Eastern Europe, let's talk about our United States right now. If you can't solve that problem, and this is not like Neil Armstrong getting back on the lunar module, blasting off and linking back up with the shuttle, or not technically a shuttle, but these are not unsolvable problems. These are simple problems. And yes, I was from Hawaii. I live in Northern California. There's no way I'm going to be ever elected into office. That's not. So please don't anybody else try to say something like that, because it's not a possibility. But we do need to ensure we have a secure voting process. That's all.
Okay. F6B Chris posted your interview on the Team House. If anybody wants to check that out, talking about what happened in Afghanistan and your trial and all that stuff, which is a fascinating story. But you can also get the book again. I'll just go back to that, just to give it one more shout out. A Few Bad Men, the true story of U.S. Marines ambushed in Afghanistan and betrayed in America. It's definitely worth a read. Okay, James S. In the order, the red flag I saw with individual ready reserve mentioned, which is one step before major engagement draft, but the number of only 3K seems to be some specialized MOS is being called up. What are the major's thoughts on how strong of a signal this order is towards a greater U.S. involvement in this engagement?
That is a really, really good question, because when you start talking about, and for some of the listeners that, and I'm not trying to insult anybody, but there's a difference between the select reserve, those who are actively called in the reserves and drilling, they're showing up, they're part of an organization, and then the individual ready reserve is also a reservist that's a one layer removed. These are people that basically break in case of war. So what the listener was referring to is, some of these are in what we call high density, high demand. There's very few of them, and they could be, and I don't know the breakdown. That kind of accounting is something that I don't have the access to. If these people are, the few and far between aviation mechanics on a 5th generation aircraft, or some type of rare unmanned aircraft repair person. Now, there's certain jobs that we just have a hard time filling in the United States military. And even when we throw literally a lot of bonus money at these men and women because they have these skills, a lot of them are getting out because it's just more profitable. And then they don't have to do these deployments. So they go into like the individual ready reserve. So they don't have to get called up and do these 6 months deployments. So the reason I believe that's such a good question is I don't have the level of visibility on the specific nature of what jobs were called out of basically not just the bench, but these guys were called out, off the injured reserve list and like, hey, you got to get, back in uniform and get overseas. But I don't sense that this is I still don't sense this is any type of thing that we need to be alarmed of. It's, we're just activating people to go over there. It doesn't specify the length of term. If some of those were specified and had clarity on how many, besides like 3,000, how many in each, what the breakdown was, how long, those details are not present. So it's hard to, comment in further detail about that.
Okay, Fred, just so we can have a little fun, lighten the mood, let's watch this to end the show, shall we?
Picture this. Innocent people in the Middle East. They're having dinner. A bomb is dropped on their house, and they're all killed. What's the problem with this? It's being done by white men. I am Jeremy Kaufman, the Chief Diversity Officer at Halliburton and candidate for United States Senate. It is time to diversify the murderous military-industrial complex. We need to make the nukes gay. And that's why I'm running for office. Like my fellow Democrats and Republicans, I will support every war. I will support stealing billions of dollars from Americans to kill innocent people, but we are gonna make it so gay. It will go down in the history books. We will say never have so many genders and so many races killed innocent people. Let's bomb Yemen, but let's make sure a rainbow of skin colors are dropping those bombs. These are gonna be the gayest transist murders the United States has ever performed. That's what I stand for as the Chief Diversity Officer at Halliburton, and that's what I'll do once elected to the United States Senate. I'm Jeremy Kaufman, and I'm gay for this message. I'm serious.
Okay, that was Jeremy Kaufman. He ran for Senate in New Hampshire. Didn't win, but I thought that was one of the funnier videos I had seen for a campaign video. All right, Fred, thanks for coming on. Thanks, everybody who's in the chat. Fred, any final closing words before we go?
The action, the chair is authorized to declare recess at any time. Welcome everyone to today's hearing on...
Okay, how about now? There we go. Fred's closing words.
As I appreciate having me on your show again, Allie. This is a very important topic. As Jeremy Kaufman's little video there showed, many Americans now realize that what once was the most trusted organization in the United States, that our military has been compromised. He alludes to it in there, so it's something, just like I commented in the book, A Few Bad Men, and this is a serious problem when American men and women are not wanting to serve to the levels that we need to have for our military readiness to be effective. We likely will go to war, just like in World War I and World War II. And I'm not talking about a skirmish in Eastern Europe or something small. I'm talking about something that's real, that's on the horizon, and there will be a flashpoint soon. I don't honestly believe that something in Eastern Europe, it possibly could, but it would surprise me. But I do think something is imminent in Northeast Asia, and that's something we need to be aware of. We need to be prepared for. We need to make sure that our national leaders, to include those military leaders as well as elected officials, do not compromise their ethics and what they're sent to Washington, D.C. to do, and that's to be our elected officials. We don't want to go to war, but we have to be ready to fight, and when we fight, to win, not have it drag out for forever wars like we've seen in the past 20 years prior to us ending those wars.
Okay. Fred, always a pleasure. Thanks again. Thanks for taking the time. Thanks everybody who's in the chat. Don't forget, there's links for sponsors to support my work in the description of the video. You can go buy Fred's book. I hope you have a great rest of your weekend. Oh, and I'm just going to give you guys a little tease here. In 1 week, I think, I've got Jake and Jelly, the QAnon shaman from January 6th. He's coming on the show. That's my tease. If you want to put in questions for him, you have got to go join my editorial board on Locals. And I'm very excited to see what those questions will be. Thanks again. See you all next time.
Thank you, Allie.